Welcome to The Works. Appreciate you joining us again today. Follow up on the conversations that we've recently had, especially around generations. We kind of talked offline, which I hate the fact that we had some great conversation offline, but we kind of came back and I thought of maybe using something like a scientific way of classifying generations. Back to Diane, your point is that, yes, you can have a label given to you at birth, that you're Generation X.
Right, but which is just based on years.
Right.
A placeholder.
And so my idea was like with the scientist, a toad is part of the blank phylum, genus, species, that we add a second moniker, based on maybe historical event, but that topic is for later because, again, we talked about generations, the labeling of, and we're looking forward to your input as well. And any thoughts you had on the idea of relabeling or a framework to better identify what that generation really is and what it means. But appreciate you joining us, Jim, along with Diane.
Hello.
And today I wanted to talk about television watching and again, probably generational related. But I still have a hard time. I'm adapting, I think, to the idea of the world is streaming, right? As opposed to what you and I grew up with, Generation X, right?
Right. We were excited when we got cable instead of just the 3 channels and PBS, and then how exciting it was when we got Fox, Married with Children. I mean, that was even before we had cable.
We were
excited.
The fourth network, yes.
Yeah.
I actually, that's an interesting. I remember where I was watching the national anthem, as they always do when they start the broadcast day. But when Fox started,
put a pin right there for a second, because some of our listeners might not know that broadcast went off the air. It wasn't 24-hour broadcasting.
Oh, well, absolutely. Right. Well, Fox initially was just primetime. And it did well. Married with Children, like you said, was that show became this hit, and it was
The Simpsons.
And it made Fox, the network Fox. I'm not talking about news or anything else,
Correct.
But just the network. But now what I was saying is that I remember where I was when they first literally came on. Back in the days where you had your antenna TVs. I was watching it on black and white TV for the first time. That normally, if you're watching TV at the end of the night, it goes to the barcode, or the not barcode, but the snow. What did we used to call that? Just when the reception wasn't good, it's all snow, right?
Right, but at the end of the day, it was that hum and the multicolor bars, and you're done.
Yeah, but this was different because it started from nothing. There's no signal, and all of a sudden, but. Anyway, back to watching television in our day. It was all about the schedule, right? It was, NBC was famous for what? Must-see TV.
Every Thursday.
And we all had our shows. I mean, even later, the later part of our generation, or I should say, was it Melrose Monday? There were places that, bars, right? That had a day that
everybody
all
would gather.
Yeah, because that's when they played the show, not now when we have the opportunity
on demand.
And it's I guess it's not, to me, it's almost maybe an identifiable attribute of our generation, right? The fact that it's taken me so long to accept the fact that everything seems to drop, right? I guess the one plus that I've gotten out of it is, sure, it's nice to be able to binge a season, right?
Right, because then you don't forget where you left off the week before, or in some of these cases where they go weeks before they pick up the second, quote, half of their season. When you have to wait 4 weeks for another episode, that's tough. I mean, the advantage of them dropping all at once is you can
Well, and I guess
retain.
but in context, I guess when I say binge a show,
Hmm.
you and I when it was more of the old stuff that we've never seen. That to your
Right.
there's two pieces of it, right? That
Hmm.
current TV. I think there's the Pit is something that we're both into. It's a
Hmm.
great show. Um, Getting a little too graphic for me, but
Right.
the blood scenes and all that stuff I'm sure they're going to win an award
Do you
for that.
remember the first show we ever binged?
Yeah, Breaking Bad.
No, way before that.
Well,
Way before streaming, when it was 24. We didn't get anything done an entire weekend.
well, how did we binge that though? That hold on, I think that binge because what was it? FX, one of the Fox networks was playing all of them all weekend, right? For that season.
Or did we get the box
Well,
set? I
okay,
don't
that's a whole
recall,
other.
but
Yeah, buying TV on DVD just so you could watch the whole season. See,
Right.
that concept is now
streaming.
completely foreign to anybody
Hmm.
that's been born, in the non-internet. What do you call it? Those that well, our kids.
Hmm.
They were born,
The Gen Z.
had no idea that there was no such thing ever as the internet. Right. That's all they know is that
Mhm.
the internet's always, and that Al Gore invented it. But the idea. So yeah, 24. But I guess what I was thinking from a service perspective, right? Based on this notion of today's broadcast world, the networks, and amazingly, not even broadcast networks, but there are so many shows that are just on a service,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
But there's no specific time. They drop at a specific time, but it's everybody is willing to watch anything at any given moment of the day, and it just, I don't know, it seems wrong to watch an evening show in your pajamas in the morning.
Right.
I don't know. It just
But it is harder for our generation. We like to channel surf or look at the guide, the electronic guide. Before that, it was the TV guide. But now you can't just scroll. You got to know which platform to look at. So, I mean, it's annoying because you're like, well, I might be missing a show because it's on a different platform and I haven't discovered the show yet. It just,
well, no, I know we've joked about this. It's with all the different apps that exist now. So you turn on the Boob Tube, and your choice, at least in our household, is the streaming, what we call cable, right?
mm-hmm.
Or apps. And that's another thing. A lot of people seem to even drop the idea of having a single service like
Cable.
like cable, Spectrum, call it, because, well, hell, they'll sign up for YouTube TV, and apparently YouTube TV, that whole idea is that you can get all those same things, but in the YouTube UI. Oh boy, that's a whole other topic. These apps and their UIs, I can't stand it. But so back to your point, and the conversation is that idea of surfing almost, and we joke about this because there's apps, they're almost like the old days where it was a channel that you got up and you had to get up from this, there's no remotes. You got up and you turned the analog dial from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. And now we actually almost have that same concept because everything is isolated to an app. So you got to
A different platform, yeah.
Turn the channel to a new app, and that app has those platform related programs that you're interested in. Of course, like I said, we've joked that
what they think we're interested in, half the time we can't find. You have to search for it because
again, good
the
point.
the algorithms.
Amazon Prime has got the worst UI, in our opinion. Unlike Netflix, which I'm not a big fan of the idea. I like the idea of it's almost like a computer. You log in and you see the people that are part of your subscription in your home, and the things that person watched is their preferences, right? But at least with Netflix, where you left off a program, that's the first things that pop up.
Right.
But Amazon Prime is the absolute worst UI. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, and you go to look for it and you're like, I can't find it, and you end up buying it again because you forgot where all your stuff was.
Yeah, that's another great topic. But yeah,
Yeah.
the idea of surfing, nobody does. Well, I think maybe. Well, I think surfing for us is truly an attribute of those with ADHD, and that's we like the 3 minute. That's why YouTube has, I think, gained so much popularity, right? And I get that's another thing is is the fact that watching network television, for a period of time, must see TV. You sat down at 8, and then you were done at 10, and you went to bed. But now you can get lost in it, whether it's your phone and you're scrolling, you're
Mm-hmm.
watching the next thing. This is why TikTok seems to be so big, right? It's just you're constantly being inundated with something new
Mm-hmm.
that you haven't seen. And especially when they come in, 10, 15, 20-second blurb, you're willing to watch,
Right.
right?
It's not a commitment.
But you end up spending all this. You'd be surprised, right?
Mm-hmm. The time just flies.
But
Well, it does if you can actually. I guess, TikTok, you don't have the quote ads like you do on YouTube.
right.
So I think maybe that's why people like TikTok is you don't have to sit through commercials.
So I guess has that watching behavior again? It seems to, and maybe it's just because we talked about generations, but is it being it somewhat generational? Is it what's hurt or helped streaming services, broadcast television? The fact that that there are programs that I mean, I'm shocked at all the unique content Netflix comes up with.
Mm-hmm.
It just it used to be relegated to the big three or big four when it comes down to it. But that watching habit, I don't know, has it changed the way we're presented now with content? Is it we're subjected to the fact that most of the other generations, the ones that are more popular, let's face it, we're the minority now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's the majority? Is it baby boomers?
Oh,
And they don't care about they
are,
don't care about TV though. They never
well,
did.
it depends. The youngest boomers, there. I mean, my brother is only 2.5 years older than I. He's a boomer. He embraces streaming, but you got to think of the older folks. They don't want the platforms. They don't. And how do you know about new shows unless you're scrolling?
Right.
Not scrolling, but you're searching on a
Well, yeah,
guide.
how do they target? But yeah, so this whole idea of again watching on demand versus at a scheduled time. I still find that opportunity, like you said, to make it an event. It's families would come together.
Mm-hmm.
You'd sit in the
Oh yeah.
and that doesn't exist.
No.
It's. But again, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. But anyways, it's we're coming up at the halfway part. We appreciate you listening. We'll be back after we take a little break. Welcome back to the Works, part 2 of our conversation regarding television watching, I guess, habits. We took on the topic today of how other generations, except ours, or I should say the current generation, there's no sense of watching program television at a specific time. Streaming has changed the world.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about. So, as a matter of fact, during the break, we had a conversation with our kids, and indeed, the idea of watching something, it's like going to dinner. We've noticed this when you go out to dinner. Everyone's watching their individual screens, right? And of course, we don't have that issue. But my point is that no one's willing to sit around the couch and watch one screen They all have their own screens, and so they want to watch their own stuff, right?
Right. Well, and it was interesting talking to our daughter. She doesn't watch any shows unless it happens to be when we have it on downstairs, and she will passively watch, but on her own, she doesn't watch any programs. Our son doesn't watch any programs. And is that just because of the generation, or is it a side byproduct of COVID? You know, everybody got tired of being together all the time. So these children of COVID, they all went to their rooms and they interacted online with friends. They played games. They didn't want to be where the main television is. So is it generational? Is it because of COVID? It just makes me go,
Well, and I think one of the things that the observation is popularity of TV stars. I guess if it, and let me.
Oh,
this
yeah.
might take this
Celebrity.
Might, yeah, this
Little
might
tangent.
take. Yeah, well, exactly. This might take a second, but the idea of in today's world, there are more quote celebrities known from the streaming platforms, YouTube or the
TikTok,
all of those compared to
movie
our day,
stars
you
and
know,
actors.
Rachel from Friends and Sam from Cheers, and it was always how much money they were making per episode. I mean, again, the idea of celebrity then and now has changed significantly. And again, is it cause and effect? Is it the way media and entertainment are delivered today makes that possible? And again, and let's face it, not to be hypocritical, but we're taking advantage of that same concept. The idea of having individual content be created for the masses at your fingertips. Again, that it's not a complaint. It's just that as my generation has a hard time not surfing the old-fashioned way,
right?
And then you find you find a program that you watch, and then the next thing you know, the program's over. You're interested in it. You maybe watch it again, but that discovery of content has changed.
Right. And I think it's a disservice to those people that are producing content that there is no go-to place. Even our Gen Z daughter says, how do you know what show to watch, which platform to open? And if you're not a social media person, I think a lot of people get ideas from social media on what to watch. But if you're not on the socials, how do you know what shows are out there? How do you know what to watch? You flip on the TV, you're like, what platform am I going to look at?
Well, exactly. And it's I guess it's not even a matter of it's almost the responsibility of entertaining oneself is what everyone else is thrown out there as entertainment content, right? Because you get the algorithm's going to show you the best thing or the newest thing or the viral thing, and then that's what you're going to watch. And yet there's no, again, I go back to, with network TV today, can you name 4 shows on any given network and what time they're on? I have no idea. No clue.
No.
Other than, and again, here's where we go down this path, other than our favorite reality type shows. And those are the ones that we know. We tend to, we're not so worried about being there at that time, but we still, I find myself, you caught me. Hey, it's almost 8:00. Survivor's going to come on, right? So,
right.
That will never be uttered from this generation forward, right? The idea of that, but maybe again because we're into a whole different era of what is famous, or what is. Or what's popular.
Right. Well, the other point that was talking to our daughter about finding shows, she said, when you have cable TV on, you might stumble upon a show that isn't the very first episode, but it might be you saw something in season 2, episode 4, and you're like, oh, this looks interesting. Now I know I want to watch this show. But when you search on platforms, you have to sit through the first episode, and you don't know if you like it or not because you don't You don't see how they all work together.
True. True.
So that the accidental cable was a way to find things out.
But see there, I think what was packaged up and money put into and produced with writers and TVP and was a concept, was an idea, right? So again, just in the title, Friends, episodic television about 6 friends,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't need much more, I guess, background to understand what that show is going to be about. I mean,
Right.
and it can go in obviously several different tangents, but when it comes to the content today, and or what it is that is being produced, it's again, it's very, it's very formulaic in its style of content, but again, it's in that example, because shows almost stand on their own. There's no building of characters so much through episodes. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Again, it goes back to, again, TV habits or I guess the bigger picture is content, and maybe the world has changed in such a fashion that the old episodic television series is almost dead. I mean, there's no point in it, and because there's so many other things out there that can be watched, and even these streaming services have started to produce their own content.
Right, and some of it is really bad. It's amazing how bad some of it truly is.
Well, and I guess with a lot of the content from our generation, do people actually want to watch Friends and sit down and binge that? I mean, are old timey TV shows in our world, are they truly bingeable? I mean, has anybody thought of sitting down and watching Leave It to Beaver from the beginning to the end?
No.
I have no desire. Mr. Ed, I have no desire. I mean, as nostalgic it would be to go back and relive some of those episodes that you remember, right? Yeah, it's fun to be able to pull those up and stream those, but even that's hard to find. I'm a big fan of MASH, and yes, you could certainly stream that. You could binge that from beginning to end, but you don't want to. I mean, you've seen them, you memorized the lines, but you will go back and watch a couple of, just because this one's a good one and this was a good one.
And maybe we just not MASH. That's always good. But some of the shows that we watched growing up, you look at them now and you're like, oh, that wasn't very good. But it was a sign of the times. You wanted to be a part of it, so you watched it and you thought it was good.
Yeah, like nothing would ever come back. Is if you think about some of these movies are a classic example. They flop the one viewing they have, but then there's this cult following that brought them back to life, right? They've had a better run, in the secondary market than they ever did when they were first released. I don't think television will ever be like that. But that brings us again back to what we were talking about, content today and how it's discovered versus, again, this idea of a scheduled program. And it's different, and it like I said, causes me to wonder if that level of, I don't say creativity, people's content out there. Again, I'm thrilled that everyone has an opportunity to have a voice heard, or at least be heard, which is amazing.
What, we're doing it right now.
Exactly. But I guess unlike what used to happen is that there's no gatekeeper to rid the world of crap,
right?
Or just nonsense, and it's just it. And I guess that's the other thing is that these generations now, there are no standards for what's out there to watch entertainment wise.
Right. Well, and another sidebar conversation talking about standards is, with television, that was at the FCC, so many minutes of airtime versus how many minutes of commercials could be there. What was that designation?
It was a number of paid advertisements that you could insert into any given program, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 24 for each half hour of free TV. You have to understand it's really not free, but
Right.
for a free TV, the idea was that the networks couldn't take advantage of more than 6 minutes of that 30 minutes, whatever percent off the top of your head that is. Indeed, there were standards, and now I think what you're alluding to is that you watch a video, even if it's somebody that that you watched all the time, and 3 minutes into the video, you get 3 90-second commercials.
Right. Sometimes it's at the very beginning, and you're like, but I haven't watched anything yet. And then you go to fast forward because you're like, oh, I saw part of this. Let me fast forward. And then you're watching another 2 minutes, and you hadn't watched anything yet other than 4 minutes of commercials.
Well,
where's the regulation there?
That's a good point. It's of course, these platforms will tell you exactly what the networks told you years ago, is they got to recover the loss and the cost that goes into the program. I mean, let's face it, it's not cheap to have all these servers out there and all this memory with all that electricity to to be able to catalog all of this content that's out there. And so that's another good point. We're maybe now even more so inundated with the minutia of corporate commercial versus the content that we're seeking out. And of course, yes, there's a way around that. Just like what happened in our day is that you paid a subscription, HBO, so and you can eliminate some of that.
Right. You were their sponsor. You paid for the content.
Oh yeah, public TV is a great. Yeah, there you go. Public TV was a good example of that. Public radio, that's all listener funded, and and that's no more. So, no, it's an interesting topic. Like I said, we threw out there this idea because I've noticed this amongst the generations. It's how people consume media, and that certainly has changed. And I think part of that change, it's also allowed for content that, quite frankly, and again, not to date ourselves, I don't get it. It's just, I don't see the entertainment value in it, but yet it's popular and there you go. That's life goes on.
Right. And with the Gen Z not watching television, what's going to happen to all these platforms out there? I mean, yes, there are plenty of us Gen Xers that are still watching and millennials, but if nobody's watching shows, then where's that lead us?
Right. We complain about the content all the time, but yet, you have to understand where the money has to come from somewhere.
Right.
People complain that Netflix costs too much. I mean, hell, the subscriptions to these services are costing more than what cable costs. And let's face it, cable in itself, that concept isn't real because everything is over the internet, and that costs different money to be able to stream effectively in your house. But could be another topic for another day. But again, love the thoughts, feedback, any ideas that you have in our conversation. What have you experienced? Have you made that change where instead of sitting down with a TV guide and planning out your week, you just start, at Rotten Tomatoes, or do you start just going through your apps and let's find something to watch, or do you spend those 3 hours from 8 to 9 or 8 to 10 in the evening, primetime TV? Do you just find yourself scrolling up and down endlessly through TikTok and YouTube videos? Is that how you all pass your time? So
yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
We appreciate that. Again, thanks for sharing some of your time, and we look forward to talking to you again later.
Bye-bye.